Hey everyone, welcome back to today's episode. Today we're addressing Tacogate. As you know, Jill Biden took a hatchet to what remained of the Hispanic voting bloc for the Democrats, why Hunter Biden is immune from media scrutiny, Florida's Frogger Man taking our highways by storm, and at the end, we'll be answering your questions from the audience. This is From the Desk of Ana Paulina Luna. My name's Ana Paulina Luna. I'm pro-life, pro-God, pro-gun, and anti-globalist. All right, what is Tacogate? As you guys know, there's viral footage of Jill Biden addressing a group of Hispanics in San Antonio. Check it out.
But we can't get those things on our own. Raul helped build this organization with the understanding that the diversity of this community, as distinct as the Bogotas of the Bronx, as beautiful as the blossoms of Miami, and as unique as the breakfast tacos here in San Antonio.
Do they start booing her at first? They literally start to boo her at first. All right, so check this out. She's addressing a group of Hispanics. As we know, this is the same woman that was gone or that went viral earlier this past year for going Sisi Puadwe, which is not even Spanish. But the point is that in all seriousness, this is completely, I'd say, racially charged when you're branding Hispanics as tacos. But more importantly, I want to know who on her speech writing team said, we're going to go to San Antonio. Obviously, we need to really hype up the Hispanic base there. So we are going to compare them to, hold applause, tacos. Makes no sense. But what's very impressive about this whole thing is we saw the memes that rolled out from this. So yesterday I went onto Twitter. We saw Marco Rubio, of all people, ended up making his profile pic a taco, so we followed in suit. Obviously, being that we support President Trump, we are an orange taco, hence the Dorito logo below. All kidding aside, when the DNC is wondering why they're losing the Hispanic vote, and then you see really the hatchet job that Jill Biden took to this speech that she gave, which, by the way, people were upset about tacos. I was upset about bodega.
The Bogotas of the Bronx.
All kidding aside, though, when the DNC is wondering why they're losing the Hispanic vote, and you look at stuff like this, you have the sitting president of the United States and his wife out here pandering literally to the Hispanic demographic, using really gross stereotypes, basically assuming we're all tacos, when in actuality, they're completely tone deaf as to the issues really affecting and impacting our community. I shared this with you guys last time, but Hispanic Americans are actually a majority small business owners. And right now, with the record high prices and inflation and in gas and what's happening with the attack on our communities through the education system, whether it's the hypersexualization of children and or them literally labeling all Hispanics that are conservative, far right extremists and Latinas or Latinos, the whole thing is just completely tone deaf. But check out this statement that the NAHJ, a Hispanic journalist organization, said. Using breakfast tacos to try to demonstrate the uniqueness of Latinos in San Antonio demonstrates a lack of cultural knowledge and sensitivity to the diversity of Latinos in the region. NAHJ encourages Dr. Biden and her speechwriting team to take time in the future to better understand the complexities of our people in our communities. We are not tacos. That's a savage roast. Jill Biden is to tacos as Hillary Clinton is to hot sauce. Remember what I said about in 2016, how they started to shift the narrative from focusing on Black Americans to now Hispanic Americans? To the Democratic Party, it's never about helping the minority communities. It's about control. And he who controls the largest vote in the country is the one who controls power. And that's what this is about, folks. It's about power. So referencing these issues that they don't seem to want to talk about, we have it coming at... The memes that came out with this were pretty impressive. The memers of the world took to Twitter by firestorm. We see a 1988 reference to the film They Live with Jill Biden checking out Hispanics as nonetheless tacos. And then we actually found one of my personal favorites. Remember in episode 1 how we referenced on Pew Hispanic, how they actually used a shade chart to determine our skin colors and whether or not we were considered more white or less white Hispanics. You can see that they now have a taco chart. Kudos to Jill Biden. I'm sure Taco Tuesday has memes from here on out. But I think this comes at actually a very coincidental time for the Biden administration, because less than 24 hours prior, we saw some of those Patriot keyboard warriors over at 4chan take Hunter Biden's cloud by storm and actually hack into it, divulging a ton of things that we can't unsee on the internet. We're not going to put all of that in this episode, but to be known, it is very, very scary that Hunter Biden is the son of the sitting president of the United States. As we all know, Hunter Biden is basically a blackmail target. I know in the past episode, we've referenced really the ties that the CCP has to the Biden administration. And as we see more of this information coming out about Hunter Biden, specifically with the fact that he's literally on film, okay? If there's one thing you don't want to put on your cloud, it's illegal activities, but it's also too, if you are a felon, the fact that he's literally measuring crack on scales with prostitutes, the fact that he's literally out there with firearms as a registered felon, and more importantly, the fact that there are some very, very disturbing photos and communications with him referencing women and potentially underage girls. So the stuff that we're seeing come out, why is it that the Twitter mafia, that the mainstream media really chose to bury this information leading up into the 2020 election cycle? Do you guys remember how they called us all conspiracy theorists because we were talking about the Hunter Biden laptop? Do you remember the fact that anyone who posted it on Twitter was basically getting deplatformed, censored, and shadow banned? Is it by mistake or is it on purpose that Twitter did this? I think it's on purpose. We know that Twitter is working hand in hand with the Biden administration. In fact, if you don't believe us, check out the case that Harmeet Dillon is currently running with social media influencer DC Drano. The fact that the administration actively worked to suppress platforms of people that were talking about these very issues. But when you look at what's happening currently, I mean, they literally lied to the American people leading up to the 2020 election cycle. They told the American people that this was fake news, that it wasn't real. And lo and behold, it's been correct the whole time. They were just bearing this information. So what we're finding is they did a national poll recently with Democrats, and they found that 1 in 6 Democrats said that they would not have voted for Joe Biden if they knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was real. So in retrospect, look at how much we're talking about, if maybe a little bit over 15% of the US population that voted Democrat, saying they would not have actively voted for the Biden administration. That's massive for any election. We know that there's obviously issues with voter fraud in 2020, but when you're talking about this, in addition to that, there is no way that you can tell me that they weren't actively working to prevent President Trump from gaining a second term in the White House. This is also to, mind you, in addition to Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, spending hundreds of millions of dollars to suppress information about elections, about immigration, about foreign policy in regards to the election cycle. So it does look like, and this is something that we've addressed here, not only on my personal platforms, but we will continue to expose, is that big tech is working hand in hand for a political agenda in an attempt to undermine the election process and to really undermine our constitutional foundation here in the United States. But more importantly, when we're talking about blackmail, I want to make something clear. Members of Congress, members of Senate, and then also to include members of the White House, when you are elected to office, they don't have to go through the same security screening process that, for example, a member of the military or the intelligence community would, which is a red flag to me because you don't know who's privy to this information and whether or not they have anything in their background or their family's background that could essentially compromise what they're finding out. So to put it in context, when I was in the military, I held a security clearance. I had to go through extensive vetting where they asked me questions about my finances, where they asked me questions about my background, and also to dug into that background of my family, right? So you have Hunter Biden, who's now basically the son of the sitting president of the United States and has a very questionable background, which makes him a blackmail target. There's countless episodes. You can look at some documentaries that Al Jazeera has actually put together talking about the blackmail strategy that the CCP uses against people that are considered political threats. We have this in addition to the pro-Chinese policy that Joe Biden is continuously pushing. We know that less than a week ago, Joe Biden actually sold some of our oil from our strategic oil reserves, check link below, to China, of all places. As we are continuing to see China make this massive push in places like the Middle East and Africa and even in South America, absorbing many of our global natural resources and also to America farmlands, let's not forget that for whatever reason, China is now actively engaging in buying up our farmland here in the United States. We see that this administration is now bending and catering, and you have to ask yourself, why are they doing this? Well, look at what's coming off of Hunter Biden laptop. I think it's questions that the American people should be asking because honestly, right now, don't forget, China is treating the United States as a global threat. I do believe in the next 10 years or so, China is going to attempt to go kinetic. Whether or not people want to address that now, it's a topic that we should all be discussing. How can we keep China at bay, remain a world superpower, but also too, you have to remember every single day, whether it's members of Congress, Senate, the White House, the intelligence community is in a 24/7 war with China. They want to undermine us. They want to hurt us. And we have to make sure that our elected representatives are not enabling this type of behavior. Look, the fact is that there's a number of people, questionable figures, that are basically shaking down Hunter Biden for money, right? So if they can do it, these are street people. Imagine what the Communist Chinese Party could do. Imagine if this would have been Don Jr. or Eric Trump. This would be on the front page of every single outlet in the country, multi-million-dollar corporations going after them, their family. They would have been socially canceled, but because it's Hunter Biden, they seem to get a pass. So although Hunter Biden's antics could have made him our Florida Man of the Week, unfortunately, none of these events, actually, should I say, fortunately for the great people of Florida, none of his escapades took place here in this state. So I bring you to our next Florida Man of the Week, the Frogger Full Monty. This man took our highways naked by storm. Check it out. People could say that this guy was really hauling ass, but obviously we want to keep it PG for the kiddos listening to this show. If you so happen to be lucky enough to see something crazy like this in the state of Florida, make sure you guys are tagging us on social media so we can feature it in our Florida Man of the Week stories. Moving on to questions from the community. All right, our first question this week is from Nellie. How do I convince my boyfriend that gun control / banning guns isn't the solution to fix mass shootings? So first question, first response I have to this is, first of all, anyone that says that banning guns is a solution to any of this hasn't really been following the facts. What's crazy is, especially in today's society, there's been this anomaly that's been created of people that are trying to become overnight celebrities, and they're becoming sensationalized for doing these awful and horrific things. So that's the first thing. Secondly, thing is we have a moral issue. We saw that the last guy, especially in Uvalde, that committed the shooting, that from everything that's been coming out, it appears that this guy was actually extremely liberal. He obviously had a lot of issues prior to that, and there was some weird content that he was posting on his social media. But the problem is that it's never the legal gun owners that are doing this, right? This guy had bad intentions. I think that based on what he was posting, based on the fact that a lot of people aren't even addressing the fact that this guy may have had some mental health issues, but more importantly, this occurred in a gun-free zone. So when people are talking about how the fact we need to make more gun-free zones across the country, that's actually false. That only enables these places to become targets for bad people because they know that people there aren't going to be able to defend themselves. And the state of Florida, especially, I've always been an advocate in ensuring that if you do have the authorization to conceal carry, that you should be able to carry, especially on places because they are targets. And we've had issues like that in the state of Florida. But again, bad guys will always find a way around basically the loopholes that they create within our legal system for firearm ownership. So and will continue to be an issue. I just think that if you concede on these topics and you give them a little bit more and more and more, it's only going to continue happening. I know that there's been other instances also, especially at 4th of July parades, etc., where people have actually used vehicles in an effort to hurt people. So it doesn't just stop with a firearm. They're going to continue to do bad things because frankly, there is evil in the world. Remember, if we give an inch, they're going to take a mile. The people that are turning in their firearms are not criminals. These are law-abiding citizens, which is why they're turning them in in the first place. And so remember, just because they don't have firearms doesn't mean that bad people won't. And especially with the open borders that we're currently seeing in this country, where do you think they're going to get them if they're not getting them from places like gun stores that have to go through background checks, etc.? Do you think those people are showing up and saying, excuse me, can I please get a firearm? No, they're getting them illegally. So the only thing that you are doing is hurting legal gun owners in the community that are using it to defend themselves, to defend their families. And by the way, why is this even up for discussion? The Second Amendment shall not be infringed is pretty cut and dry. Why do they continue to try to take our firearms? Ask yourself that. Next question is from @SotoAdventures. Why do liberals hate Latinos that can think for themselves? Okay, so going back to the whole strategy that I believe the Democrat Party has here, we are talking about the fact that now moving on forward from here on out, the largest voting minority in the country is Hispanic Americans, specifically those of Mexican descent. When we are talking about power struggles here, when we are talking about the fact that the United States is the biggest superpower in the world, they don't like people that are going to speak out against their narrative of what Hispanics should be, right? They want to put us into this box of we're supposed to all be liberals. We're supposed to all want open borders. We're supposed to all believe that if you want border security, that you are inherently racist. That is all fake. That is a lie that they've told to the American people, especially in an effort to sway and pull on the heartstrings, not telling them about really the human rights abuses that are taking place at the border. You can mark my words that what they are going to do is, as we continue to be more vocal, we saw that there was massive backlash against Jill Biden for basically referring to Hispanic Americans as tacos. Okay, if any Republican member did that, they would say that you were racist. You'd have Media Matters all over it. I mean, the fact is that there's a double standard that exists. But the more that we are vocal, the more that we are working together. And I think that it is going to be increasingly more important for members of the conservative Hispanic community to stick together, not fight one another, because they're trying to pick us off one by one. They're trying to label us as extremists. You have the Democrat Party literally going after people that are running for office that are minorities, putting them on extremist watch lists. I mean, think about that. That's scary. That's only something that happens in a communist country. They're trying to fact check us. They're trying to hold and maintain what truth is according to their lens. But the fact is that the truth is what we are putting out there. We are fighting back. And that is exactly why they're working overtime to censor us and silence our voices. But guess what? They're not going to win. We're not going to let them win. And the more that all of you continue to fight back using your convictions, your morals, and your voices, the more that they lose. So Dennis Prager actually, when I was at an event, said an amazing quote. He said that I'm not an optimist or a pessimist. Basically, when you stop fighting, they start winning. And that's exactly where we're at today, folks. All right. And another question we have from Rob @Rob4 on Instagram. What are the names of my chickens? So I have 3 chickens. As you know, I'm really big with growing my own stuff. For God's sakes, I make my own sourdough. That's a separate topic. Maybe I'll do a cooking video on how we make sourdough starter here at Team Luna. But aside from that, what I can tell you is that I have 4 chickens. I have 2 Easter eggers and 1 black star. So that's actually the type of chicken. Our Easter eggers are going to be laying blue-green eggs, and then the black star actually lays kind of a chocolatey colored egg. But our names are as follows. So the black star is a lot smaller than the 2 Easter eggers, and so we call her Nugget. And then our 2 Easter eggers, we have Alcatraz, which is the one that tends to try to break out the most. I've found her a couple of times walking around the house after she broke out of her little bin that we have her in with the food and the light. And then we have Creamsicle, which happens to be a lighter Easter egger. And it's kind of interesting because she's actually the one that's a little bit more paranoid. We go to pick her up and she's always yelling about something, but we feed them mealworms. They obviously love vegetables. They love strawberries. And as we continue to see this Biden inflation, it's actually a lot cheaper to have your own chickens. So I highly recommend it. They're a lot of fun. We're pro chicken in this family. All right, last question is for @DXStinny with a couple of N's and a couple of Y's. Advice for young females going into political campaigns. So look, politics is a full-fledged blood sport. I actually referenced this on a documentary that MSNBC did on what I'm doing on my other half of my life. So not really getting too much into the details on that. But I can tell you that when you choose to get into politics, Matt Gaetz said it the best to me once. He said, it's like being a real life pincushion. You just have to understand that the name of the game is to try to attack and basically undermine and discredit anyone who is basically standing up to a lot of the evil that they're putting out. And frankly, it is evil. You cannot tell me that when you are busy suppressing, you have all the information of what Hunter Biden's doing, they're suppressing it. You have all the information about human trafficking, they're calling it a conspiracy theory. They're actively working against the American people. And frankly, it's wrong. So you have to understand that when you get into this game, that you are going to be attacked and you are going to be hated for what you are. But you should not care, because at the end of the day, it's in my personal opinion that, we're not on this planet forever. It's about what you leave behind, whether or not you are going to leave a better world versus the condition that you initially found it in. And that's exactly what we're all doing here, especially at Common Ground Studios, is we are working together to put out the correct information to make sure that they can't lie to the American people anymore. Frankly, I encourage more women to get involved in politics, because you know what? The Democrats, the liberals, they're actively saying that conservative women don't exist. And that's simply false. We exist. And a lot of times we beat them at their own issues, right? Imagine Kayleigh McEnany, how much attack she dealt with every single day. But you know what? She kept fighting. And she's arguably a lot more talented, a lot smarter than a lot of the liberal puppets that they tend to stand up on the left. But because of the fact that she's a conservative, they don't want to give her the time of day, right? Remember, we had Melania Trump, beautiful conservative woman, speaks a million different languages, a legal immigrant, but she was never on the cover of Vogue magazine. She was never on the cover of any of these magazines that said that they wanted to encourage women, right? Because she was a conservative. So you can't expect them to play fair, but what you can do is you can help fight back, and we need you. So I encourage everyone to get involved, but you have to have thick skin. You can't let their attacks get to you. And frankly, there are people, especially like myself and other conservatives out there, like Candace Owens, like mostly peaceful Latinas, people that are speaking up, using their platforms to do so. And frankly, we could use the help. Anyways, when you come out as a conservative, you are going to basically, go through your life cleanse. You might lose friends, you might even lose family, but what you will gain is people that respect you, that appreciate you. And frankly, it's a lot more liberating being able to speak your mind, speak your ideas, and have people in your life that will support you. So you have a home here with us from the desk of Ana Paulina Luna. But thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Make sure that you are sharing this content on your social media. We look forward to next week's episode. Tune in then.